The fluorescent lights of the pediatric ward hummed above me as I checked the IV drip for the third time that hour. Little Mason, 6 years old with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, slept fitfully in the bed, his mother dozing in the chair beside him. I adjusted his blanket with practiced gentleness, the kind that came from 5 years working at Manhattan Children's Hospital, the kind that came from watching my own sister fight this same battle and lose. 8 months. That's how long Emily had been gone. 16 years old, full of dreams about art school and traveling to Paris, reduced to ashes in an urn on my mantel. The grief hadn't dulled. It had just learned to hide better, surfacing in quiet moments like this when I saw another child fighting the same monster that took her. The medical bills hadn't gone anywhere either. $680,000. That number lived in my head, a constant background noise drowning out everything else. I'd worked 2 jobs for months, made minimum payments, survived on instant ramen and hope. Then 3 weeks ago, the restaurant where I waitressed nights closed without warning. The payments stopped. The calls started. I finished my rounds at 11 p.m., exhausted down to my bones. The subway ride to my studio apartment in Queens was a blur of fluorescent lights and strangers' faces, except for one face that appeared too often lately. A man in an expensive suit, reading a newspaper but never turning the pages. I'd seen him 3 times this week. Different trains, same man. Probably nothing. Probably my paranoia acting up. My phone buzzed as I climbed the stairs to my 4th floor walk-up. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press accept. Miss Brooks, a smooth male voice said. "We need to discuss your outstanding balance. I have payment arrangements," I replied, fumbling with my keys. "I'm working on it. Those arrangements are no longer acceptable. My employer requires immediate settlement. We'll be visiting you tomorrow at your place of employment. 2 p.m. Don't be late." The line went dead. Cold dread settled in my stomach. The next day dragged with agonizing slowness. At 1:55 p.m., I stood in the family consultation room, hands shaking slightly as I straightened my scrubs. The door opened at precisely 2 p.m. Adrian Cross walked in like he owned the space, and maybe he did. 42 years old, graying at the temples, wearing a suit that cost more than 3 months of my rent. His eyes were cold calculation dressed up as concern. "Miss Brooks," he said, not offering to shake hands. "Natalie. May I call you Natalie? I'd prefer you just tell me what you want." He smiled, thin and sharp. Direct. "I appreciate that. You owe me $680,000. Your sister's treatment was extensive. Experimental therapies, specialized care, the best that money could buy. And it's time to pay. I've been making payments," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have documentation." He slid a folder across the table. "Open it." Inside were documents I'd never seen before. Legal forms with my signature, agreements I didn't remember signing, and at the bottom of each page, a different number. $1,200,000. "That's not right," I whispered. "That's not what I owe. It's exactly what you owe." Cross replied smoothly. "Interest, administrative fees, care costs that exceeded initial projections. It's all documented. This is fraud. These signatures, I don't remember half these forms. Feel free to hire a lawyer. Though I imagine that will be difficult given your current financial situation." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "But I'm a reasonable man. I have an alternative arrangement." My skin crawled. "What kind of arrangement?" "You work in a very interesting place, Natalie. You care for the children of some very important people. Senators, CEOs, federal judges. People who talk around their sick children, who make phone calls in waiting rooms, who discuss things they shouldn't. I need someone who can remember those conversations. Pass along certain details. Do that for 1 year, and your debt disappears." The room tilted. "You want me to spy for you? On my patients' families? I want you to be practical. 1 year of cooperation versus a lifetime of financial ruin. Consider it carefully." "Get out," I managed. My voice shook with rage I couldn't quite control. "Get out before I call security." He stood, unruffled. "You have 48 hours to reconsider. After that, I'll be forced to pursue more aggressive collection methods. And Natalie? I always collect what I'm owed. He left, leaving the folder behind like a coiled snake. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at impossible numbers. Then I did something I'd never done before. I left work early, claiming illness that wasn't entirely a lie. Sarah found me in the hospital parking garage, sitting in my ancient Honda with my head against the steering wheel. She knocked on the window, concern written across her face. "Natalie? What's wrong?" Sarah Chen, 31, pediatric oncology nurse, my closest friend at the hospital. A year ago, I'd helped her escape an abusive boyfriend. Let her stay in my tiny apartment for 2 months. Stood between her and a man twice my size when he came looking for her. She'd never forgotten. I told her everything. The words poured out in a desperate rush. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. "There's someone I know," she said carefully. "He handles problems that the law can't or won't touch. It's not legal, Natalie. It's not safe, but it's effective." I should have said no. Should have found a lawyer, filed bankruptcy, done something within the system. But the system had already failed me. Failed Emily. Failed everyone without money or power. "Make the call," I whispered. That night, Sarah drove me to a restaurant in Tribeca. Closed sign in the window, but the door opened when she knocked. Inside, the lights were dim, tables empty except for one in the back corner. He sat alone, reading something on a tablet, a cup of espresso untouched beside him. When he looked up, I forgot how to breathe. Viktor Sokolov was 37 years old and looked like he'd been designed to intimidate. 6'3", broad shoulders filling out a black shirt with sleeves rolled to expose forearms marked with old scars. Dark blonde hair, ice blue eyes that seemed to catalog every detail about me in 3 seconds. A thin scar bisected his jaw, the only flaw in features that belonged in a museum. "Sit," he said. His voice was low, accented with something Eastern European. Russian, maybe. I sat. Sarah squeezed my shoulder and left, leaving me alone with a man whose presence filled the entire room. "Tell me," Viktor said, setting aside his tablet and giving me his full attention. So I told him. About Emily, about the debt, about Cross and his impossible demands. He listened without interrupting, those blue eyes never leaving my face. When I finished, he was quiet for what felt like an eternity. "Adrian Cross," he finally said, "is a broker. He connects people who shouldn't know each other, sells information, facilitates transactions that can't happen in daylight, uses debt as a weapon to control desperate people." He leaned forward slightly. "You're not the first person he's tried this with, but you might be the last, if you let me handle this. What do you want in return? Honest? Good." He almost smiled. "I'll buy your debt from Cross. All of it, whatever the real number is. You'll owe me nothing financially, but you'll stay under my protection for 6 months. Live in my home, follow my rules. Trust that I know how to keep you safe from men like him." "That's still ownership," I said, hating how my voice shook. "Just a different master." Something flickered in his expression. "Perhaps. But I don't break what's mine. And I protect it absolutely. Why? Why would you do this?" He studied me with unsettling intensity. "You intrigue me, Natalie Brooks. You fought for your sister until the end. Worked yourself to exhaustion trying to honor a debt you shouldn't have to pay. That kind of loyalty is rare. Valuable. And I protect valuable things." The way he said it, low and certain, sent shivers down my spine. Not fear, exactly. Something more complicated. 6 months, I said. "That's all?" "That's all. After that, you're free to go. No debt, no obligation." I should have asked more questions. Should have demanded details, guarantees, legal documentation. But I was drowning, and he was offering a lifeline, even if it came with chains attached. "Okay," I whispered. "I accept." He stood, extended his hand. I took it. His grip was warm, firm, completely enveloping mine. "Wait here," he said, and pulled out his phone. 20 minutes later, we were in a black SUV heading uptown. I sat in leather seats that probably cost more than my entire car, watching the city blur past tinted windows. Victor made calls in Russian, his voice clipped and commanding. I caught my name once, then Cross's. We stopped in front of a glass building in Midtown. Cross's office. Stay in the car, Victor ordered, then disappeared inside with 2 men I hadn't even noticed following us. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. Then Victor returned, carrying a briefcase that hadn't been with him before. He slid into the seat beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Leather, and something darker, like smoke. It's done, he said. You belong to me now. The words should have terrified me. Instead, I felt the first relief I'd known in 8 months. The SUV pulled away, heading toward Westchester, toward a mansion I couldn't imagine, toward 6 months of protection from a man whose eyes promised both safety and danger in equal measure. I'd made a deal with someone possibly more dangerous than Cross. But as Victor's hand rested on the seat between us, close but not touching, I wondered if danger was exactly what I needed. The Westchester mansion appeared through iron gates that opened silently at our approach. Stone and glass. Elegant in a way that suggested old money, even though I suspected Victor's fortune was considerably newer and harder won. Manicured gardens stretched in every direction, dotted with security cameras I could spot even in the darkness. A woman waited at the entrance. Gray hair pulled back severely, eyes that assessed me with professional efficiency. Mrs. Russo, Victor said. She'll show you to your room. The interior was stunning. Hardwood floors, original art that probably cost more than my entire education. High ceilings that made me feel small. Mrs. Russo led me upstairs without conversation. Opened a door to a bedroom 3 times the size of my apartment. Private bathroom, walk-in closet already stocked with clothes in my exact size. That detail sent ice down my spine. How long have you been planning this? I asked Victor, who'd followed us up. 3 days, he replied calmly. Since Sarah first made contact. I like to be prepared. You had my sizes before I even agreed? I had your entire life, Natalie. Medical records, work history, credit report, shoe size. Information is survival in my world. He moved to the window, checked something I couldn't see. Breakfast is at 8. We'll discuss rules then. Get some rest. He left before I could respond. The lock didn't click, I noticed. I wasn't a prisoner, technically. Just trapped by circumstances that felt worse than any physical restraint. I didn't sleep. Spent the night exploring my gilded cage, testing windows that wouldn't budge, studying the garden below where a man in a dark suit walked precise patrol routes. When dawn finally came, I was exhausted and furious in equal measure. The dining room somehow looked even more intimidating in daylight. Victor sat at the head of a table that could seat 12, reading a newspaper, espresso steaming beside him. He'd changed into a different black shirt, this one emphasizing the muscular build his tailored suits had only hinted at. Sit, he said without looking up. Mrs. Russo brought food, eggs, toast, fruit, coffee. I realized I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. The rules, Victor began, folding his newspaper with precise movements, are simple. You don't leave the property without me. You don't contact anyone outside without my knowledge. You cooperate completely. In return, you have freedom within these grounds. Anything you need provided. And safety from Cross and anyone else who might threaten you. For 6 months. For 6 months? He agreed. Those blue eyes finally met mine. Unless you'd prefer to leave now? You know I can't. Then don't fight what you've already chosen. We ate in hostile silence. I wanted to hate him. Wanted to rage against the control he'd assumed over my life. But he wasn't cruel. Wasn't even unkind. Just absolutely certain of his authority. The first week passed in frozen warfare. I explored the grounds, finding beauty I refused to acknowledge. Read books from a library that held first editions worth thousands. Avoided Victor except at meals that grew increasingly tense with unspoken words. The second week, something shifted. Victor started explaining things. About Cross. About the network of corruption that used people like me as assets. About the men who'd been watching me. Part of Cross's operation ensuring his investment didn't disappear. You saw them, he said over dinner. The man on the subway. The car that followed you home twice last week. You noticed but dismissed your instincts. I thought I was paranoid. Paranoia keeps you alive. Dismissing it gets you killed. He showed me photographs. Men in surveillance shots. Faces I half recognized from cafes and street corners. My stalkers. Catalogued with the efficiency of someone who understood predators, because he was one. Cross didn't just want information, Victor continued. He wanted control. You had access to children of powerful people, yes. But more than that, you're observant. You remember faces, patterns, conversations. You witnessed things at that hospital without realizing their significance. What things? Men asking questions about specific patients. Visits that seemed routine but weren't. He slid another photo across. Recognize him? I did. He'd been at the hospital 4 times in 2 months, always asking about the same senator's daughter, always claiming to be from insurance verification. His name is Thomas Garrett. He works for Cross, gathering intelligence on political targets. You saw him, probably even spoke to him. And you'd remember if Cross ever needed to activate you as a witness or eliminate you as one. The food in my stomach turned to lead. The 3rd week, Anya visited. 7 years old, dark curls bouncing as she ran through the front door, calling for Uncle Victor in a voice filled with pure joy. He scooped her up like she weighed nothing, spinning her around while she shrieked with laughter. I watched from the library doorway, stunned. This was a different man entirely. Gentle, playful, completely unguarded. He noticed me watching, and something vulnerable flickered across his face before his walls slammed back up. Anya, he said, setting her down. This is Natalie. She's staying with us for a while. The little girl studied me with serious eyes too old for her face. Are you Uncle Victor's girlfriend? No, we said simultaneously, then looked at each other, something electric passing between us before we both looked away. Anya stayed for dinner. Victor cut her food without being asked, wiped sauce from her chin with practiced ease, listened to her stories about school with complete attention. My heart did something complicated watching them together. After Anya's father collected her, Victor found me in the library. She's my sister's daughter, he said without preamble. My sister disappeared when I was 19. Our family was destroyed by people we trusted. I looked for Elena for years, found her too late. She'd fallen into drugs, died when Anya was 2. I got custody, gave her the stability our family never had. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Don't be sorry. Be grateful you understand why I do what I do. Anya is innocent. She gets protected, no matter the cost. He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. You're innocent too, Natalie. That's why you're here. I don't let innocent people get destroyed by predators. The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, made my pulse race. You're not innocent, I whispered. No, he agreed, voice dropping lower. But I know exactly what I am, and what I'm willing to become to protect what matters. We stood there, the space between us charged with something I didn't want to name. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered in Russian, expression hardening. When he hung up, the vulnerable man who'd played with his niece was gone entirely. Get to your room, he ordered. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. What's happening? Now, Natalie. I ran, reached my room as I heard vehicles approaching, men shouting orders in clipped tones. Sergei, Victor's right-hand man I'd seen but never spoken to, appeared in my doorway. Away from the window, he commanded, then positioned himself between me and the glass. Gunfire erupted outside. Sharp cracks followed by shattering glass. I pressed myself against the wall, heart slamming against my ribs. More shots, closer now. Men shouting. Something exploded, rattling the entire house. Then Victor burst through the door, gun in hand, shirt torn and bloodied. He scanned the room, found me, and something like relief crossed his face. Are you hurt? He demanded, crossing to me in 3 strides. No, I'm fine. What's happening? Cross sent mercenaries, professional ones. He grabbed my hand, pulled me toward the hallway. We need to move. Another explosion, this one shaking the floor beneath us. Victor shoved me behind him as men in tactical gear appeared at the end of the corridor. He fired 3 times, precise and brutal. 2 men fell. The third retreated. We ran through smoke and chaos. Sergei met us at a reinforced door, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "They're pulling back," he reported. "Lost half their team." "Make sure they don't regroup," Victor ordered. "Sweep the grounds. I want prisoners if possible." Sergei disappeared. Victor finally released my hand, turned to face me. His eyes were wild, dangerous, nothing like the controlled man I'd been living with. "You bought me," I heard myself say, voice shaking with adrenaline and fury and fear. "You promised to protect me, so do it. You bought me. Now do it, Victor. Keep me safe or let me go." He moved faster than thought, backing me against the wall, hands bracketing my head. His face was inches from mine, breath ragged, eyes blazing with something feral. "I will burn this entire city to ashes before anyone touches you," he said, each word deliberate and fierce. "You're not just something I bought, Natalie. You're mine because I choose it. Because keeping you safe matters more than anything else in this God-forsaken world." "Then why did you hesitate?" Tears I didn't want burned my eyes. "Out there you could have died." "I didn't hesitate," he said roughly. "I made sure you were protected first. Always first." We were breathing hard, staring at each other. The space between us crackling with months of tension finally breaking surface. He leaned in, and I thought he'd kiss me. Wanted him to, despite everything. Instead, he pulled back. "Not like this," he said, voice ragged. "Not when you're terrified. When I kiss you, Natalie, you'll want it. Not just accept it because adrenaline makes you desperate." He walked away, leaving me against the wall, shaking with reaction I couldn't name. "We're leaving tomorrow," he called over his shoulder. "This location is compromised." Pack light. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from replaying the moment his control had cracked, revealing the fierce, possessive man underneath, and from wondering what it meant that I wanted to see that man again. The Manhattan penthouse occupied the entire 23rd floor of a building overlooking Central Park. All glass and steel, modern art on white walls, security so tight I'd counted 6 cameras just in the elevator ride up. Smaller than the Westchester mansion, which meant Victor and I would be living in much closer quarters. That thought made my skin feel too tight. 5 weeks since he'd bought my debt. 3 weeks since we'd moved here after the attack. The hostility had faded into something more dangerous. Awareness. Every time we passed in the hallway, every shared meal, every accidental brush of hands sent electricity through me that I couldn't ignore. Victor felt it too. I caught him watching me with an intensity that made breathing difficult. But he maintained careful distance, like I was something fragile he didn't trust himself to touch. This morning, he found me in the living room attempting yoga, trying to work off nervous energy that had nowhere else to go. He stopped in the doorway, coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Trying not to go insane from being trapped indoors," I replied, stretching into downward dog. "You're not trapped. You're protected." Semantics. He set down his coffee, moved into the room with predatory grace. "If you need exercise, I'll teach you something useful. Self-defense. If someone gets past me, you should know how to fight back." I straightened. "You think that's likely?" "I think preparation is survival." His eyes held mine. "Be in the gym at 6. The building's gym was private, accessible only to this floor. Victor was already there when I arrived, wearing athletic pants and a fitted shirt that showcased exactly how dangerous his body was. All controlled power and lethal capability. He taught me basics. How to break a grip, strike vulnerable points, use momentum against larger opponents. Which meant he had to touch me, adjust my stance, demonstrate holds that brought our bodies close. "No," he said, repositioning my arm. "You're too tense. The tension makes you predictable. Hard not to be tense when you're this close." I muttered before I could stop myself. His hand stilled on my shoulders. "Good," he said, voice dropping an octave. "Use that awareness. Channel it into action instead of freezing." We trained for an hour. By the end, I was breathing hard, hyper-aware of every point where his skin touched mine. He caught me from behind in a demonstration, arm around my waist, and neither of us moved for several heartbeats too long. "Tomorrow," he said roughly, stepping back. "Same time." The training became routine, but so did working together. Dimitri, Victor's tech specialist, set up secure systems that let me do remote medical consultations. Within days, I was reviewing cases from my old hospital, advising on treatments, feeling useful for the first time since this started. Victor needed help too. He spread surveillance photographs across his desk, pointed to faces I recognized. The men who'd visited the hospital, asking questions, gathering information. I identified 7 of them, remembered specific conversations, details I hadn't realized I'd retained. "You have perfect recall," Victor observed, something like admiration in his voice. "That's rare. Valuable. It's a curse sometimes." I tapped one photo. This man asked about Senator Morrison's son, wanted to know his treatment schedule, visiting hours, which staff worked which shifts. Said he was from hospital administration. He's not. Victor made notes. He works for Cross, mapping vulnerabilities. Access points. Working together created a different kind of intimacy, intellectual partnership that felt as charged as physical proximity. Victor listened to my insights, incorporated my perspective, treated me like an equal instead of protected property. One evening, after hours reviewing intelligence, he poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one. "Tell me about Emily," he said. "Not the death, not the debt. Her." So I did. About her art, her laugh, the way she'd fought so hard and so bravely. When I finished, tears were sliding down my face. Victor reached out, wiped them away with surprising gentleness. "Loss doesn't make us weak," he said quietly. "It makes us understand what's worth protecting." "What did you lose?" I asked. "Everything," he replied. "My father was killed when I was 19, betrayed by his own brother, who wanted control of territory we didn't even know existed. My mother hanged herself 2 weeks later. My sister Elena disappeared into the system. I looked for her for years, found her too late, destroyed by drugs and the men who'd exploited her addiction. She died when Anya was 2. I got custody, but I was too late to save Elena." His voice was steady, but pain bled through every word. I took his hand, squeezed it. "You saved Anya. I learned what I had to become to protect what matters," he said. "Built walls so high nothing could get through. Then you showed up. And I realized walls keep things out, but also trap you inside." We sat in silence, hands intertwined, something shifting between us, barriers lowering, defenses crumbling. The investigation progressed. We discovered Cross wasn't working alone. He'd connected with a larger organization, Russians moving into territory Victor controlled. They wanted his infrastructure, his routes, his power. Using me against him was just the opening move. "I need to attend a hospital benefit," I told Victor one morning. "It's been 5 weeks. People will ask questions if I don't show." "Too dangerous," he said immediately. "I'll have questions either way. Let me maintain appearances. You can come with me." He didn't like it, but agreed. The night of the event, I wore a dress Dimitri had somehow procured in my size, emerald green that matched my eyes. When I emerged from my room, Victor went very still. "You look," he started, then stopped. "Dangerous. That's my line," I replied, taking in his tuxedo that made him look like every fantasy I'd been trying not to have. The benefit was at the hospital. Hundreds of donors in glittering formal wear. Sarah found me immediately, pulling me into a hug. "God, I've been worried. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I assured her, very aware of Victor's hand resting possessively on my lower back. Then Adrian Cross appeared through the crowd, smiling like a shark. "Natalie," he said warmly, as if we were old friends. "I've been so concerned. Heard you'd been swept away by Mr. Sokolov here." He turned that predatory smile on Victor. "I do hope you're taking good care of my investment." "She's not your investment anymore," Victor replied, voice calm and deadly. "She's under my protection, which means you don't speak to her. Don't look at her. Don't acknowledge her existence." Cross's expression hardened. "I'm simply concerned for her well-being." "This man," He addressed the gathering crowd, has a reputation for violence, for taking what he wants. Natalie, if you need help, if you're being held against your will, I'm exactly where I choose to be, I interrupted, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. You manipulated me, falsified documents, tried to coerce me into criminal activity. Victor offered me protection from a predator. You're the threat here, Mr. Cross. Not him. Cross's mask slipped, showing rage underneath. You'll regret this. No, Victor said quietly, stepping between us. You will. Security intervened before it could escalate. Victor guided me outside, hand gentle on my elbow despite the tension radiating from him. We need to leave, he said. Now. In the car, silence stretched between us, thick with adrenaline and unspoken words. The penthouse was dark when we arrived, city lights streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Thank you, Victor said, surprising me, for defending me, for choosing this. I meant what I said, I replied. I'm here because I choose it. He moved closer, backing me against the window. Even knowing what I am, what I do, especially knowing that. My breath caught as his hand came up, cupping my face. Because you're also the man who plays with his niece, who listens when I talk, who looks at me like I matter. You do matter, he said roughly. More than you should. More than is safe. Then stop being safe, I whispered. Stop holding back. His control snapped. He kissed me like he'd been dying to, desperate and demanding and devastating. I kissed him back with equal hunger, months of tension finally breaking. We stumbled toward his room, shedding clothes, all pretense of distance abandoned. He pulled back once, breathing hard. Once we do this, he said, forehead against mine, there's no going back. You'll be mine completely, and I'll be yours. More vulnerable than I've ever been. Then be vulnerable with me, I said. I'm tired of being alone in this. We didn't stop. Didn't hold back. And when I fell asleep in his arms hours later, skin against skin, heartbeat sinking, I knew everything had changed. I'd stopped being his responsibility. I'd become his choice, and he'd become mine. Morning light painted the bedroom in shades of gold. I woke wrapped around Victor, his arm heavy across my waist, his breathing deep and even against my neck. 7 weeks since he'd bought my debt. One night since everything changed. He stirred, tightened his hold on me. Don't move, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. Not ready for this to end. It doesn't have to, I replied. His eyes opened, those ice blue depths warmer than I'd ever seen them. Everything's different now. You understand that? I know. He kissed me, slow and thorough, like he had all the time in the world. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered with a curse, listened, expression hardening. I'll be there in 20. The real world, crashing back in. We adapted quickly to the shift in our relationship. Victor was different, less controlled, more openly affectionate. He touched me constantly, like he needed confirmation I was real. In meetings with his men, his hand would find mine under the table. During training sessions, demonstrations lasted longer than necessary, both of us finding excuses for proximity. Sergei noticed, shared a look with Dmitri that clearly said their boss had a weakness now. But neither commented, at least not where we could hear. The investigation intensified. Cross had gone quiet, which Victor said was more dangerous than open attacks. Surveillance showed him meeting with Russians, serious men with military backgrounds. They weren't just after territory anymore. They wanted Victor's entire infrastructure, the roots and connections he'd spent years building. Worse, they wanted to use that infrastructure for trafficking, moving people like cargo, selling them to the highest bidder. Victor's face went cold as stone when we discovered that detail. I've done things I'm not proud of, he said that night, staring out at the city. Hurt people who deserved it, and some who probably didn't. But I have lines. Children, trafficking. That's a line I'll die before crossing. Then we stop them, I said simply. We. He turned, pulled me against him. When did this become we? When I stopped being cargo and became your partner. He kissed me hard, possessive, then softened. You're more than a partner, Natalie. You're the first thing in 20 years that made me want something beyond survival. The call came 3 days later. Victor's phone, unknown number. He answered on speaker. Mr. Sokolov. Cross's smooth voice filled the penthouse. I have something that belongs to your friend Natalie, Sarah Chen. Lovely woman. Very loyal. I'd hate to see that loyalty rewarded with suffering. My blood turned to ice. Victor's hand found mine, squeezed once. What do you want? Simple exchange. Sarah for Natalie. Tonight, 11 p.m., I'll send the location. Come alone or Ms. Chen dies slowly. The line went dead. No, Victor said immediately, reading my expression. Absolutely not. She's there because of me, I argued, because she helped me. I can't let her die, and I can't let you walk into a trap. He was already on the phone with Sergei, issuing orders in rapid Russian. We extract Sarah. You stay here where it's safe. I'm not staying here while an innocent person suffers because of me. You taught me to be strong, Victor. Let me use it. We fought for an hour. Voices raised, accusations flying. Both of us terrified and furious. Finally, he grabbed my shoulders, forced me to meet his eyes. If I lose you, he said, voice breaking, I lose everything that matters. Don't ask me to risk that. You won't lose me, I promised. We do this together. We use me as bait. Your team extracts Sarah, and we all walk away. He hated it. I saw the refusal in every line of his body, but he also saw the determination in mine. Recognized that I'd become someone who wouldn't hide while others suffered. Fine, he growled. But you wear a tracker. Microchip. Subcutaneous. Satellites can track your exact location and vital signs. And you follow my orders exactly. No heroics, no improvisation. Deal. Dmitri inserted the tracker, a device smaller than a grain of rice injected beneath the skin of my shoulder blade. Sergei went over the plan 3 times. Victor loaded weapons with mechanical efficiency, jaw tight with controlled rage. At 10:30 p.m., the location came through. Warehouse in Red Hook, industrial area. Minimal witnesses. Victor drove with me, his hand never leaving mine. I don't know how to do this, he admitted as we neared the location. Don't know how to let you walk into danger when every instinct I have screams to lock you away where nothing can hurt you. You do it by trusting me, I said. By trusting us. He pulled over 3 blocks away, killed the engine. His team was already in position, invisible in the darkness. He cupped my face, kissed me with desperate intensity. You come back to me, he ordered. That's not a request. I will. I promise. I walked the final blocks alone, heart hammering. The warehouse loomed ahead, rusted and abandoned. Inside, lights blazed. Cross waited in the center, Sarah bound to a chair beside him, duct tape over her mouth. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. Natalie, Cross said warmly. So glad you could make it, though I expected Mr. Sokolov to be more possessive. He's learning to let me make my own choices, I replied, moving closer. Let Sarah go. That was the deal. The deal was an exchange. You for her. But you see, there's been a complication. Cross gestured, and men emerged from shadows. 6 of them, armed and professional. My Russian associates insisted on being here. They want to ensure Victor understands his position. Weak, vulnerable, compromised by caring about someone. Love isn't weakness, I said, echoing words I'd told Victor. It's what makes him dangerous. Cross laughed. Poetic, but ultimately irrelevant. See, this was never about the debt, or even about you specifically. It was about creating a point of leverage. Victor has something we want. Territory, infrastructure, connections. We'll use you to make him surrender it all. And if he doesn't, well, his smile turned predatory. We'll make sure he watches what happens when he refuses. Movement in the rafters. Barely visible. Victor's team, getting into position. I needed to keep Cross talking. Give them time. Why do all this? I asked. You're successful, connected. Why work with traffickers? Money, power, the usual motivations. Cross shrugged. Victor thinks he's better than us because he has moral lines. But lines are just limitations. I prefer to be unlimited. Then you've already lost, I said. Because Victor's lines make him stronger. Make people loyal. You just make them afraid. Cross's expression hardened. Enough philosophy. He pulled a gun, aimed it at Sarah. Last chance. Call Victor. Tell him to surrender his territory, or your friend dies. I opened my mouth, but the warehouse exploded into chaos. Windows shattered as Victor's team breached from multiple points. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Cross grabbed me, arm around my throat, gun to my temple. Call them off, he hissed in my ear. I remembered Victor's training, used Cross's momentum against him, dropped my weight, twisted hard. His grip loosened for 1 second. That's all Victor needed. He appeared like vengeance itself, gun raised. The shot was precise, catching Cross in the shoulder. Cross screamed, dropped, clutching the wound. Victor's men swarmed the Russians, professional and overwhelming. Sergei cut Sarah free while Victor reached me, hands running over me frantically. Are you hurt? Did he hurt you? I'm fine. I gasped, adrenaline making everything sharp and bright. Sarah? Alive, Sergei confirmed. Victor pulled me against him, face buried in my hair. Never again, he muttered. Never putting you at risk like that again. We won, I said. We saved her. Nearly lost you doing it, but you didn't. Cross was secured, wounded but alive. The Russians were subdued. We'd won, but the cost felt heavy. Victor was silent the entire drive back, jaw clenched, knuckles white on the steering wheel. At the penthouse, he finally exploded. That was insane, he shouted. Reckless. You could have died. But I didn't, I shouted back. I trusted you. Trusted us. And it worked. This time. What about next time? What about when I can't get there in time? When the shot isn't clean? When everything goes wrong? Then we deal with it together, I said, forcing my voice calm. Victor, I love you. I'm not going anywhere. He froze. What? I love you, I repeated. I didn't want to. Fought against it. But I do. And love means partnership, not protection. Means trusting each other through the dangerous parts. He crossed to me. Movements less aggressive, more desperate. I love you enough to let you go if this life is too much. I'm not going anywhere, I said firmly. We face this together. That's what love is. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, carried me to bed, made love to me with an intensity that spoke of fear, transformed into devotion. Afterwards, wrapped in sheets and each other, he whispered against my skin, "Marry me." I pulled back to see his face. What? Not because I bought you. Because I love you more than survival itself. Marry me, Natalie. Yes, I breathed. Come back from whatever war is coming and I'll marry you. We fell asleep tangled together, love declared, promises made. Tomorrow would bring new dangers. But tonight, we had each other. And that was enough. Victor took me to the Catskills the day after the warehouse. A property I hadn't known existed, tucked into mountains 2 hours north of the city. Stone and timber, rustic in a way that felt deliberately isolated. Safe house, he called it. Place where we could breathe while the world sorted itself out. Sarah was safe, staying with her sister in Connecticut. Cross was secured somewhere Victor wouldn't tell me about. Alive but contained. The Russians were regrouping after losing men in the warehouse fight. We had a moment of quiet before the real war began. 9 weeks since Victor bought my debt. Felt like 9 years' worth of living compressed into impossible time. The Catskills house had a fireplace, walls of windows overlooking forest, and isolation that felt like its own kind of luxury. Victor was different here. Less tense, more present. We cooked together, talked for hours, made love in front of the fire like we had all the time in the world, but shadows lingered behind his eyes. On the third morning, he found me on the porch, watching sunrise paint the mountains gold. Sat beside me, coffee steaming between his hands. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. Don't know how to keep you safe, and also let you be the strong woman you've become. Every instinct I have says to lock you away where nothing can hurt you. but I saw your face at that warehouse. You weren't just surviving anymore. You were fighting. You taught me that, I replied. Taught me that strength isn't just physical. It's choosing to act even when you're terrified. He took my hand, laced our fingers together. I've been thinking about what comes after we deal with the Russians, after Cross is handled. What kind of life I can give you. What kind of life do you want to give me? Normal. Safe. The things you deserved before I complicated everything. I don't want normal, I said firmly. I want meaningful. I want you, whatever that looks like. His throat worked. Even if it means always looking over your shoulder. Even if our children grow up with guards and protocols. The mention of children made something warm bloom in my chest. Especially then, because they'll have a father who knows the darkness exists and fights against it. Who has lines he won't cross? That matters more than safety, Victor. He kissed me, soft and reverent. How did I get this lucky? You bought a debt and got something priceless. Best investment I ever made. But reality couldn't wait forever. That afternoon, Sergei called. Victor took it in the study, returned grim-faced. Cross-talked, he said. Gave up everything about the Russian operation. They're bigger than we thought. Not just local organization, but connected to major trafficking networks. They want my infrastructure specifically because it's clean, established, harder for law enforcement to track. Using it would give them access to ports, routes, connections I've spent years building. What are you going to do? Dismantle them before they can move. Victor pulled up maps on his laptop, marked locations. But there's a problem. The operation is run by Alexei Volkov, former military intelligence. Smart, brutal, experienced. Taking him down requires more than force. Requires information I don't have. So we get the information. He looked at me. We, I confirmed. You're not doing this alone anymore. That's not how this works. Interrogating Cross took 2 days. Victor didn't want me there, but I insisted. I needed to understand what we were facing. Cross, bandaged and bitter, sat in a secure room, looking diminished without his tailored suits and predatory smile. You broke my operation, he said flatly. The Russians won't forget that. Tell me about Volkov, Victor demanded. His operation, his locations, his weaknesses. Cross laughed, harsh and broken. He doesn't have weaknesses. That's the point. Everyone has weaknesses, I said, surprising both men. What does he care about? What matters to him? Cross studied me with something like grudging respect. Power. Control. He lost family in Chechnya, came to America with nothing, built everything from ground up. His reputation is everything to him. Proof he survived when everyone else fell. Victor and I exchanged looks. Reputation was leverage. We could use that. Cross gave us locations, schedules, the architecture of Volkov's network. In exchange, Victor agreed to something that made my stomach turn. He'd turn Cross over to federal authorities with evidence of his crimes, but not evidence connecting him to Victor. Clean separation. That's justice? I asked later, anger bleeding through. That's survival, Victor replied. Perfect justice doesn't exist in my world. But Cross gets decades in federal prison. That's something. The investigation revealed another complication. Someone in Victor's organization was feeding information to the Russians. Small details. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to suggest a traitor close to the center. Paranoia settled over us. Victor trusted no one except me, Sergei, and Dmitri. But even they moved under suspicion's shadow. We investigated quietly, watching patterns, tracking communication. It took 4 days to identify the leak. Sergei brought the evidence to Victor at midnight, face grim. The traitor was someone I'd seen but never really noticed. Yuri, mid-level soldier, 8 years with Victor's organization. Family man, quiet, competent. Bring him, Victor ordered. When Yuri arrived, fear radiated from him. He knew. Victor laid out the evidence methodically. Encrypted messages to Russian contacts, meetings logged by surveillance, money transferred to offshore accounts. Why? Victor asked, voice deadly calm. Yuri broke. confessed that Volkov's people had his family in Russia. Parents, sister, nieces. They'd grabbed them 2 months ago, used them as leverage. Give us information, or watch them die slowly. He'd been feeding minimal intelligence, trying to protect them without betraying Victor completely. The room was silent. Victor stood, and I saw murder in his eyes. Yuri saw it too, started begging. "Victor," I said quietly, "think about what you told me. About lines you won't cross." He looked at me, jaw clenched. "This is treason, Natalie. In my world, there's only one response. In your world, maybe. But you also told me you're not your father. That you built something different. Prove it." We stared at each other, tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Victor turned back to Yuri. "Tell me everything. Location of your family, Volkov's operation, every detail you know. Do that, and I'll get your family out. Give them protection, new identities, fresh start. But you leave my organization. You take the mercy I'm offering and disappear." "Understood." Yuri sobbed with relief, spilled everything he knew. After he left with Sergei to begin extraction planning, Victor pulled me close. "You made me weak," he said against my hair. "Made me think mercy is possible. Mercy isn't weakness. It's strength you couldn't afford before. Because now you have me to share the burden." His arms tightened. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Bought a debt," I reminded him. "Got something priceless instead." Yuri's information changed everything. We knew where Volkov operated, where his key people were, when his next major move was planned. Victor began assembling a team, planning an assault that would dismantle the Russian operation in one coordinated strike. The night before the operation, Victor was wired with tension. Anya had visited that afternoon, unaware of what was coming. Watching them together, seeing him gentle and playful with his niece, made my heart ache. After she left, I found him in the study staring at maps he'd memorized days ago. "Talk to me," I said. He looked up, exhausted. "What if I don't come back?" "Don't say that. Natalie, I need you to understand. What we're doing tomorrow, the risk level, it's beyond anything before. Volkov is military trained. His people are professionals. I could die, and if I do, I need to know you'll be okay." I moved to him, took his face in my hands. "You're coming back, because we have plans. Wedding, future, maybe children of our own someday. You don't get to propose and then abandon me. Is that what you want?" His voice cracked slightly. "Children with me? Knowing what that means? Yes, I want everything with you. The beautiful and the terrible, the safe and the dangerous. All of it." He pulled me into his lap, held me like I was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "I wrote you a letter," he admitted. "Instructions if something happens. Bank accounts, properties, everything in your name. You'll be taken care of. Victor, just in case. Let me have that peace." We made love that night with desperate intensity, like we could hold back tomorrow through sheer force of connection. Afterwards, wrapped around each other, he whispered promises against my skin. "Come back to me," I said. "That's not a request. I will. I'll always come back to you." His hand found mine, fingers interlacing. "Marry me when this is over. Let me make you mine in every way that matters." "I'm already yours," I replied. "But yes, end this war, and I'll marry you." We fell asleep, tangled together, knowing tomorrow would bring either victory or devastation. But in that moment, we had each other, and we had hope that love could survive even the darkest battles. Victor left before dawn. I woke to find his side of the bed cold, a sealed envelope on the pillow with my name written in his precise handwriting. I didn't open it, refused to acknowledge the possibility that I'd need whatever instructions lay inside. Sergei stayed with me, along with 2 other guards whose names I'd learned over the past weeks. The Catskills house felt too quiet, too empty without Victor's presence filling the space. The operation was scheduled for noon. Coordinated assault on Volkov's New Jersey headquarters during a meeting of his key lieutenants. "Cut the head off the snake," Victor had said. "End this before it escalates further." At 11:45 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message. Radio frequency attached. I could listen, but not speak. One-way connection to keep me informed without creating tactical complications. I put in the earpiece with shaking hands. Heard Victor's voice, calm and commanding, issuing final orders in English and Russian. Heard vehicles moving, weapons being checked, the sounds of professionals preparing for war. At noon exactly, I heard the breach. Explosive charges blowing doors, shouting in multiple languages. Then gunfire. So much gunfire that I flinched despite being 2 hours away. East wing secure, someone reported. 3 hostiles down. West wing compromised, another voice said. Taking heavy fire. More explosions, more shooting. I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, barely breathing. Sergei watched me with sympathy but said nothing. Then Victor's voice, strained. Volkov's location confirmed. 2nd floor. Moving to engage. Silence stretched for endless seconds. Then the distinctive sound of close-quarters combat. Grunts, impacts, a gunshot so loud it distorted the audio. Package secured, Victor finally said, breathing hard. Volkov down. Non-fatal. 3 of ours wounded, 1 critical. Extract now. Relief made my knees weak. Sergei caught my elbow, steadied me. Is he hurt? I asked, knowing Sergei couldn't answer, needing to ask anyway. He's breathing, Sergei said. That's what matters. The next 3 hours were agony. Radio chatter confirmed team extraction, casualties being stabilized, Volkov and surviving lieutenants secured. But no word from Victor directly. Finally, at 3:15 p.m., headlights appeared on the mountain road. Victor emerged from the SUV, blood on his shirt, bruises darkening his jaw, but alive. Whole. I ran to him, and he caught me, lifted me off my feet, buried his face in my hair. I came back, he said roughly. Told you I would. That night, after medical attention for his injuries, after debriefing with Sergei, after the adrenaline finally faded, we lay in bed holding each other. He told me about the operation, about facing Volkov in a room that smelled of gunpowder and blood, about the choice he'd made to wound rather than kill. Because of you, he said. You made me remember there are options beyond elimination. Volkov's in custody now, talking to federal contacts I've cultivated. His network is dismantled. The trafficking operation is ended. And your people? The ones hurt? 2 stable, 1 critical but expected to survive. We lost no one. Against those odds, that's a miracle. 3 days later, Victor did something unprecedented. He contacted FBI agents he'd been avoiding for years, handed over Adrian Cross along with meticulously organized evidence of years of fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. Kept himself clean from the documentation, but gave them enough to bury Cross for decades. I testified in a federal courthouse 3 weeks later, Victor beside me, his hand never leaving mine. Told the grand jury about Cross's manipulation, the falsified debt, the coercion attempts. Cross was indicted on 17 counts. His lawyer argued, but the evidence was overwhelming. Sentencing came 2 months later. 25 years federal prison, no parole eligibility for 15. As they led him away, Cross looked at me with pure hatred, but I felt nothing except relief that it was finally over. With the Russians dismantled and Cross imprisoned, Victor began the transformation he'd been considering. Not abandoning his world entirely, that would have been impossible and dangerous, but transitioning toward legitimate operations, using connections and infrastructure for legal purposes. It won't be overnight, he told me. Probably take years. And I'll never be completely clean. Too much history. Too many ghosts. But I can build something better. For us. For the children we might have. That conversation led to another. About family. About futures. About what life could look like beyond survival. We talked about Anya. About being the kind of parents who understood darkness existed but fought against it anyway. About creating safety not through isolation, but through strength and love combined. Victor established a foundation in Emily's name, dedicated to helping families with catastrophic medical debt, providing grants and assistance so no one else had to make impossible choices. The first recipient was a family I'd worked with at the hospital, drowning under bills for their daughter's cancer treatment. Watching Victor present them with a check that eliminated their debt entirely, Seeing his quiet satisfaction at transforming pain into purpose, I fell in love with him all over again. The wedding happened 4 months after the Volkov operation. Small ceremony at the Catskills house. Only people who mattered. Anya was flower girl, throwing petals with 7-year-old enthusiasm. Sergei and Dmitri stood as witnesses, along with Sarah, who'd forgiven me for dragging her into danger. I wore simple ivory, no veil, no excessive ceremony. Victor wore a dark suit that made his eyes impossibly blue. We wrote our own vows, speaking truths that made several people cry. "I bought your debt," Victor said, voice steady despite emotion glinting in his eyes. "But you bought my heart, purchased it with courage and compassion I didn't know existed. You saw the man beneath the monster and loved him anyway. That's a price I'd pay infinite times. You saved my life," I replied, tears sliding freely. "But I saved your soul. You taught me strength. I taught you mercy. We made each other better. And that's what love is. Choosing each other every day. In the beautiful moments and the terrible ones. We're even, Victor. And we're just beginning." He kissed me as our family applauded, and I tasted salt from both our tears. 8 months later, I stood in the nursery Victor had constructed with obsessive attention to detail. Soft colors, every safety feature imaginable. Enough security to protect a small country. My hand rested on my growing belly, our daughter moving beneath my palm. We'd planned this pregnancy carefully, talked extensively about bringing a child into our complicated world, decided that love and preparation were better than perfect circumstances that didn't exist. Victor found me there, wrapped his arms around me from behind, hands covering mine on my stomach. "She's active today," I said. "Strong, like her mother." He pressed a kiss to my neck. "Are you happy, Natalie?" "Truly happy." I turned in his arms, met those ice blue eyes that had terrified me once and now felt like home. 10 months ago, I was drowning, desperate and alone and out of options. You bought me for 6 months, but you gave me a lifetime. Yes, Victor, I'm happy. We stood in the nursery designed for the daughter we'd made together, surrounded by the life we'd built from impossible circumstances. Later, we'd have dinner with Anya, who was excited about becoming a big cousin. We'd review security protocols and discuss foundation business and live the complicated reality of our world. But in that moment, we had peace, had each other, had proof that even the darkest beginnings could transform into something beautiful. That evening, I visited Emily's grave, told my sister about the life I'd built, the man I'd married, the baby growing inside me, about how debt had brought me Victor, and Victor had brought me purpose beyond survival. "Your death taught me that life is fragile," I said, placing flowers on the headstone. "But loving Victor taught me that it's also stronger than we imagine. I'd never choose to lose you. But I won't waste the life you gave me. I'll live it fully, messily, courageously, for both of us." That night, Victor and I sat on the Catskills porch, watching the sunset paint mountains gold and crimson. Anya dozed between us, exhausted from playing. Our daughter moved beneath my hand, reminding me of futures we were building together. "Do you regret it?" Victor asked quietly. "Any of it? The danger, the violence, the complicated life?" "Not 1 second," I replied honestly. "You?" His arm tightened around me. "I regret not finding you sooner. Regret all the years I wasted building walls instead of looking for the one person who could climb them. But everything after that first night, best decision I ever made." We kissed as the sun disappeared, as stars emerged in the darkening sky. Two people who'd paid impossible prices, made desperate choices, found something priceless in the wreckage. He'd bought me out of obligation. But we'd chosen each other out of love, and that made all the difference. Some debts, it turns out, are worth paying. Some purchases become priceless. And some love stories begin in darkness but shine bright enough to light the way forward, for us and for the family we were building together. One brave choice at a time.